In the past century, education has hardly budged, stubbornly stuck in its old ways. Then COVID struck.
So I regret to have to announce that as of tomorrow, our public schools will be closed.
Students everywhere were thrust into a new, unfamiliar territory of virtual classrooms. But for many, the sudden shift was underwhelming and missing a crucial element: actual learning.
Schools across the county and the country have seen a surge in low grades during the pandemic.
That's when WEquil stepped in, an app founded on the principles of community and hands-on learning. Sumay Lu, the founder of WEquil, alongside her sister Alia, have taken on the challenge of reinventing a system that was failing many. With their parents' support, they've created a space where learning is active, community-driven, and genuinely exciting. As we sit down with Sumay, she'll take us through the journey of creating WEquil, the hurdles of building a global educational community, and how a family's combined efforts are carving out new paths for learners everywhere.
Teaching kids how to operate as an adult in the real world early on in a safe environment with a community around them of, peers, parents, and professionals that care about them and are helping them succeed.
Sumay, your path to becoming a CEO of an edutech startup is pretty amazing, especially considering that you're so young. Before we even get into this first question, what is edutech?
Sure. Well, I think that the way you could define it is just the intersection between education and technology. Of course, these days, technology is basically a part of everything. And so I don't know if that would necessarily be a big distinction from just talking about education in general. But I think in edutech, it's more about focusing in on leveraging software in kind of imbuing that in the educational experience and making it so that you can really leverage these tools that are available to everyone now to give each student the best educational experience possible.
Mm-hmm. And can you share with us the moment when you realized, I'm going to go off on my own, I'm going to start this new frontier, and I am going for it with this new educational edutech company?
Sure. Well, I think that's a really hard question to answer because my sister and I, we were kind of just doing this because out of necessity. When the pandemic hit, we started this learning by doing philosophy where we were taking what we were interested in and using that to create value in some way, whether that's through creating an article or a video or some class, just depending on our interests and how we thought we could add value to the world. And that was something we were already doing for our own education and wanting to share with our friends and our neighbors. And so I think that that was something that we were already doing and just decided that, might as well continue on with this and leverage it to the best of our abilities to also aid in our own educational journey, because of course creating a platform like this is a great educational experience in and of itself.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit about the platform that you created?
Yeah, definitely. So this first started out with WEquil School, which is a virtual micro school where we're helping kids become self-directed using a project-based learning philosophy. And we were trying to do this using various pre-existing platforms like Slack and Discord and Wix websites, and that was just a big mess, ton of work. It worked. There was definitely a lot of engagement and interest that we got from a lot of people, but there was a lot of extra work added to it that made things hard for us. And that's when we decided to build WEquil App, which was a platform in which we could really scale what we were doing, streamline it, add a lot of automation when it came to communication, allowing students to publish projects, being able to streamline payments, all of those things. Just for our own purposes, because that was something that we were struggling with, but realized that this is something that can help with anybody, no matter what you're doing, whether that's a family looking to start a learning pod and connect with with like the families locally around them, or if you're an educator trying to scale your class, or a business owner looking to kind of find those people that really value your solution, all of these tools are going to be valuable no matter who you are. And so that kind of grew into more of what we're looking at now, which is a global school platform connecting families, educators, and entrepreneurs so they can all kind of leverage each other and their resources and their services and what they're providing to create a educational marketplace that is kind of based in project-based learning, but we're also open to having people using more traditional educational models, but just using the technology that we have to really provide these educational solutions that we can, given the landscape that we have and the technology and opportunities.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing to sit here and listen to you talk, because I've done a lot of these podcasts. I've talked to a lot of people, but I don't feel like I feel like I'm talking to a adult who's gone to an Ivy League school or something for learning business and startups. And the way you communicate, I'm sure surprises a lot of people. What has the feedback been when you tell people, I'm 14 years old and I'm the CEO of EdTech startup?
Yeah, well, I can actually tell a funny story. We were going out, we oftentimes will do this just for fun. We'll go to a park or someplace and ask people different questions and get fun little video interviews of them. And one of the questions we love asking is, what's something you believe that most people you know disagree with? And so we actually asked this to someone who was a high school teacher. We didn't know it at the time, but she said that she believed that all kids should go to school, and she thought most kids would disagree with her about that. And so that was just such a coincidence, given everything that we're doing. And so we talked to her about WEquil School and some of the things that we were working on, and she just said, I think you guys are doing great. Just keep doing what you're doing. So that was a pretty funny story. And I think that it kind of shows that a lot of there's kind of some misconceptions around like what are people doing outside the outside the traditional education system, as well as what can students really do when they're outside of that system and how they communicate themselves. And so I guess for me, a lot of people are wondering like what is the process that we're using and how it is that I kind of came to be doing this. And I think a lot of it is really about giving kids the experiences and opportunities to do real world things like adults, because they're perfectly capable of doing them. Generally, you'll want to make it on more of like a smaller scale, maybe instead of live streaming yourself to the world, maybe just have a Zoom call with your friends and family and present what you're doing, but at least have those opportunities to practice public speaking, to actually create something that you share with other people. Like, if not just keeping it to yourself, because then you're not really adding value to anyone. That can maybe feel a little bit limiting for young people if they aren't able to take what they're passionate about and actually share it with other people. So there are definitely a lot of different reactions, but it's been great meeting a lot of people. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback. I think the challenge is kind of making it accessible to everybody.
What I love about you is the fact that you are like Exhibit A, because of the fact that this even works. The concept of being able to create novel and useful projects and use those to learn and grow and educate yourself to do something amazing. Because you're not in school, the traditional school, right? You've used the philosophy, the concept that you guys have created with WEquil and WEquil School, and you have used that to educate yourself to then grow this company and start this startup. And you have a team of developers you work with. And what's so amazing is that you are the proof's in the pudding. The concept works. You and your sister are great examples of that.
Yeah, that is something that we struggled with, because a lot of platforms and people are working to create a process to teach young people how to become, self-directed and responsible. But it's like I want to hear from the kids from this program, like what are their experiences and how has that worked out for them. And part of it is also the incentives when it comes to certain programs. If you have an ongoing subscription-based program, it's not necessarily something that you're incentivized to do when it comes to creating a young person that is actually, self-directed and responsible and able to learn on their own, because then they wouldn't need your program anymore. And so that's part of how we've tried to structure the incentives of WEquil School hand in hand with WEquil App, because once students are self-directed and responsible, let's say they're running their own business or selling books on Kindle or doing these entrepreneurial things, they can then use rooms on WEquil App to sell those products and services that they're creating, in which WEquil App gets 5% of that. And so because of that, we're really incentivized to try to help these young people become self-directed and learn how they can, financially support themselves through leveraging what they're already doing and creating, which is something that I don't think I've seen really anywhere else, but it is definitely very cool seeing how that's worked out so far.
And it's like that's a major innovation in the space, especially the educational space, which doesn't seem like it's changed in the last 100 to 150 years. What are some other innovations you believe are crucial for the future of education?
So I think that there are definitely a lot of key problems that can be solved using technology that already exists. And of course, we're trying to build out a lot of these tools within WEquil App ourselves. But what you see in some of the problems that are arising in traditional schools, one, there's a huge teacher shortage, and that's something that can definitely be solved with technology by helping teachers scale themselves and serve more students while doing less. And that is also part of automating away the processes of teaching that are kind of redundant and not even fun for the teachers. They don't necessarily like lecturing the same lecture over and over again. When you could just record it, upload it to YouTube, you don't have to do it anymore. And then you can focus on the part of teaching that is fun, which is that human connection that you have with your students. And so that there's a lot of other repetitive tasks that can be automated, a lot of things that are part of, these big systems that can be more efficient using technology, especially on a more micro level. You're seeing more micro schools and teachers that are leaving the education system so they can provide their services in a more flexible way using other platforms. And so being able to really give them all the tools that they need, and also the tools that can help them grow. If you're a teacher that is looking to maybe grow your services into a micro school by partnering with other teachers and finding either people virtually or locally that could be interested in that, how can you automate those payments easily? There's a lot of problems that teachers might run into if they're outside the traditional system and those things aren't taken care of for them. And that's part of the technology solution we're trying to build, is making that as easy as possible for families, educators, and entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm. You've used the term micro school quite a bit. Can we dive into, explain WEquil just a little bit more, maybe the core mission, how you're facilitating global education? Does that fit into micro school, homeschool, deschooling, all these terms around this moving away from the traditional school? I hope that question makes sense. It was a little confusing.
Yeah. So, and I think when it comes to the core mission, we're really trying to help anyone from around the world leverage their strengths, interests, and passions to add value to the world through our global school platform. And so there's a lot of different ways that people can do this, and there are a lot of new innovations when it comes to the way that people are approaching this, especially in education. And so you're seeing essentially these micro communities of any sort, whether that is families facilitating learning pods or co-ops, or people who are, let's say, they're providing educational solutions for people in their neighborhood, and that kind of grows into more of what you might call a micro school. There are some different definitions when it comes to micro school, and it is a more recent phenomenon, so not everyone doesn't necessarily know exactly what it means, but it's really just an education an education service that is more on like a micro level. Usually they're local, but they can also be virtual. And so what we're really trying to do is help these people do what they're already doing, but streamlining their services, being able to scale their services to the world, and then also being able to really build that community around themselves. So even if you're a micro school operating locally, there's a lot of ways that technology can actually help you build that community by allowing families to connect with each other outside of, meeting up in person, if they can communicate with each other from that platform and meet each other from a single platform.
Mm-hmm. We had touched a bit earlier on the projects that are created for the educational process, but those projects do more. They're not just like a lot of times when people think project, they think, homework or an assignment, and it's something that you're going to do. The entire class is doing something similar, and then you get graded on it, and then it gets thrown away. Can you explain a bit more what a project means to you and WEquil?
So essentially, a project is any creation that is novel and useful. And so that is our definition of a project, which is different than what most people might think of when they hear the word project. But that can be really anything from an article to a video to an application to a class to writing a book, to starting a club, or really anything that is novel and useful. And so that's very different than a lot of schoolwork you'll get in traditional schools where everyone's doing the same thing. That's not really novel because everyone's doing the same thing, but it's also not really useful because it's getting thrown away. Who's seeing it? How is it useful to other people? And so what we're really trying to do is help everybody create these projects, because what adults are doing in the real world is just creating novel and useful value, whether that's for themselves, if they're working for themselves as an entrepreneur, or for a corporation. Regardless of the situation, if you're not creating novel, useful value, then you're not really going to do very well. So I think part of this is simulating what it's like as an adult in the real world for children early on, so they can learn these skills, because in the age of automation and AI, these repetitive and unambiguous tasks are just being automated away. If you only know how to follow directions, then that's not going to get you very far, because the computer can also follow directions and it doesn't need to sleep, eat, and it doesn't make mistakes. So that's not a great deal for those people. And so really teaching kids how you can be creative problem solvers, and be able to be quick on your feet, think of solutions, see maybe they work out, maybe they don't. Then you'll have to continue iterating on them. You'll have to learn how to work with other people, how to sell yourself, how to communicate who you are. There's all these skills that come along with creating novel, useful value that can be learned at an early age if you give them the right expectations of, like, what are you here to do? It's not just to get a grade. It's you're trying to communicate. What's the purpose of writing? Is it to write this many characters on a page, or is it to actually communicate your ideas to other people? And so really teaching kids how to operate as an adult in the real world early on in a safe environment with a community around them of, peers, parents, and professionals that care about them and are helping them succeed.
I love the concept of the projects, because you're teaching kids at a young age skills that are actually valuable, and how to they're going to be experts in knowing how to public speak or present or create videos. They're going to have things that can actually be used in the world that we live in today when they're done with their education, or they can start implementing those things early on. You talked about how some of these kids can start up their own classes, which means they can then be teaching other students and even generating an income through the WEquil app. And so I really just love this concept of learning by doing. And I want to dive a little bit into WEquil. How do people join? Is there a membership? How does that actually work?
Yeah, definitely. So for WEquil App, it's a free platform. Anyone can just create an account, and we have a bunch of different functions to help you succeed in whatever you're doing. But then we also provide membership programs that will help you learn to leverage our platform along with our learning philosophy. And so there are 3 membership programs for 3 different purposes. The first is WEquil School, targeted towards families, where we're helping you learn, about our learning philosophy, which is a project-based self-directed learning philosophy, where you'll learn how to create a learning pod for your family using our platform. We're really trying to help people build not only a community around themselves, but one in which they can actually leverage that community in a lot of different ways. Let's say you're a homeschool mom and you're planning a field trip for your kids. There's no reason why you can't invite other families around you locally to come along with you and pay you a little bit of money. And so we want to help you, just create a product right in your learning community on WEquil App that you've already created. It'll take 5 minutes. And then for people who want to join you, then you can get paid, and it's all just streamlined and super easy through that learning pod. And so there are a lot of other ways that we're helping parents kind of leverage these communities as well. Let's say they're learning about a new subject because their kid is really interested in it. They can just take all the resources that they're using and then populate a classroom and then put it behind a paywall for anyone who also wants to check out those resources as well. And so there are a lot of ways in which you can take what you're already doing and use that to make money, and also just make it so that, let's say, you don't even put your class behind a paywall. It's just something that your kids can look back upon if they're like, I want to review what we learned last year about this thing, and then they can just easily go back and see that. And so that's something that is very high value per time spent, but a lot of parents don't necessarily know how to do it and what platforms are available, so we're trying to build it right into WEquil App within that learning pod. So during the WEquil School membership program, we walk them through that process, as well as how to leverage our learning philosophy to really help their kids become self-directed and have the skills to learn whatever they need to create whatever they want. And so that's the WEquil School membership program, but we also have 2 other programs for educators and entrepreneurs. And for both of these, all of these programs share kind of 2 key components, which is the philosophy as well as leveraging the technology to create value and especially grow community. And so for educators, that is scaling your class or micro school by building a community on WEquil App that has all of the resources that you need for your teachers, as well as streamlining payments, also streamlining communication, and also linking to other resources that you may have and having that all in one place, as well as how you can use project-based learning to make it so that your students are teaching each other. They can be in an environment where they are applying their knowledge to create value, which there are many studies that have shown that increases retention of learning as well as engagement in learning. And so there are a lot of ways that we help educators with that as well. And then for entrepreneurs, especially education entrepreneurs, we're helping them build community around their solution and their product so they can engage with core users and really learn how they can improve and what they can provide to those that really care about what they do. Because these days with social media, you can get a bunch of followers and think, oh, these people, they get what I'm doing, they like what I'm doing, but they're just the barrier to entry to clicking a follow or subscribe button is so low that it's really hard to know that, and it's really hard to get valuable feedback from these communities that are not really communities because you're not engaging personally with these people. You don't really know them. And so there are a lot of problems that we're trying to solve for these core groups, but I think the thing that is kind of hard to communicate but is very unique about WEquil App is we're really trying to serve humans and help them to leverage their strengths, interests, and passions to create value. And that's the same whether you're a kid or an adult or a family or an educator or an entrepreneur. There's a lot of the same themes that you'll see, just directed to different areas and different goals depending on your needs and what you want to do.
Would you be able to share some success stories? Because a lot of people I don't want people to think that this is just standard virtual learning like people experienced during COVID and the lockdowns and things. And can you explain, like, maybe go into a little bit more detail on the differences of the virtual learning that people saw over the last year and a half, 2 years, 3 years, and what you guys are really trying to do?
Right. So I'll take that in two parts. First, I can cover some of the success stories because it is helpful to kind of know, like, how does this actually work out and the examples. So one of which is that someone we're working with is Rebecca Ferre. She's part of our leadership team for the WEquil School membership program, but she first started out just looking for a solution for her family because she just quit as a public school teacher. She was a public school teacher for 15 years with a ton of experience working with special education students, and she was trying to start homeschooling for her own family. And of course that comes with a whole host of challenges, but one of which is that she has all this experience. You know, she of course wants to spend a ton of time and energy with her own kids, but there's a lot that she could have been doing to also help other kids and leverage her expertise in ways that could also help her, make money and support herself. And so that's where we helped her found the Wired Differently community on WEquil App, where she's running podcasts every week. She's actually doing one later today that I'll be on. And then also serving, parents that are coming in and maybe they have kids that have, special needs in their education, and she can help with consultation services or just building community around herself, because of course she'll want to meet more homeschooling families just because she might want more friends for her own children to know local families or maybe families from anywhere around the world that they can be engaging with. So there's a ton of different ways that this is helping her. But it's really easy if you know how to, use our platform in all these different ways. And so that's just one example. Another is one of our students. She's been with us for a while now. Her grandparents that live with her, they have, certain health risks. So it's difficult for her to go out and be with other kids because that could pose risk for her family. And so because of that, it's been limited to mostly virtual interaction. So we've helped her make a ton of friends where she can be engaging with them. And, I hear them having stuffy club meetups, which are always a ton of fun. We have virtual dance parties every week. There's a bunch of ways in which these kids that might have, health complications themselves or family members can continue to engage with other people and build community around them through these virtual communities if they're based off of shared interests and values, because a lot of the relationships that we were building in the past were just kind of coincidental, like we happen to be family or we happen to live near each other and so we're going to build this relationship. But being able to really build that from something that's deeper, and that's how you can really continue these everlasting deep relationships virtually, even if you've never met in person. So there are a lot of ways in which we're helping people. It's been, amazing to see. We're definitely looking forward to, continuing to see what are the problems that people are facing and finding new ways and new functions we can build within our application to continue to serve them. But yeah, I think to your second question about how our, virtual learning is different than traditional virtual learning. We know a lot of parents and families had a horrible time during the pandemic. It's like, sitting in front of the screen for 8 hours. It was pretty awful. I can definitely attest to that since I was one of those kids. But the way that we're really approaching this is thinking about how can we have, reoccurring meetups for these kids so they can build relationships, but then also give them the freedom and flexibility to do things that are off the screen, that don't require them to sit on in front of a meeting. If you teach kids to be self-directed, you don't need to constantly stare at them through Zoom to make sure they're not like playing Minecraft or something, right? If you know that they're self-motivated, then they can just be doing their learning and creation independently without anything necessary for necessitating that. And so because of this, Generally, what we have is we help families set up learning pods in which they can have daily meetups that are only an hour long, where they can establish goals and talk to each other about project ideas and give each other feedback and establish like what is it that I'm going to do today, so that once they get off the call, they can independently work on whatever it is they decided they want to work on, as well as creating and attending any kind of clubs and classes that they want. And so that's generally what we've seen works the best for most families. But of course, this is also flexible, and parents are running their own learning pods, so they can, do whatever they think is best for their kids with that.
I know that's a big concern. Was a lot of people had a really bad taste put in their mouth from the last couple of years, and WEquil and WEquil App and WEquil School are very, very different. What you guys offer actually works. And again, you and your sister are the proof. I do want to kind of switch gears a little bit about getting back to you. And how many staff members do you guys have working for you at this point?
Yeah, so we, when it comes to the app, we have 4 professional developers working on building WEquil App, but then we also have around like maybe 10 leadership coaches for the membership program. And so that's kind of around the people that we're working with as partners for the membership programs, but there's also many people that are community leaders on WEquil App that we're working with to help them grow their communities as well.
Mm-hmm. And how has it been for you fulfilling the role as the CEO of WEquil, and in a sense being in charge of these people, having to direct them, having to answer questions? How have you taken to filling what seems daunting to a lot of people, just a very big role?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think that a big part of it is actually similar when it comes to when we're helping, families run learning pods or teachers run classes, which is building relationships from shared values and goals, because most of the people that we're working with, I've never met in person. I've never met you in person. We did go to India last year to meet some of the people that we've been working with, but it really didn't make any difference. We'd been working with them for over a year already, and part of it, I think, is just about if you have that shared goal and those shared values, then the purpose of your relationship can transcend whatever locality you may live in and whatever complications may arise when it comes to working through these virtual platforms. And so that it can pose some challenges, but definitely these people are some of the closest people in my life. It's been amazing working with them. And so I think that's a big thing that can really undercut all these problems that sometimes can come up with virtual relationships. And so I think that's been the main thing for me.
Mm-hmm. How are you managing and kind of balancing your ability to operate as the CEO and manage this group of people, but then also continue to grow as your own person and enjoy your life? How are you balancing that right now?
I think it's a bit different than what most people kind of think of when a lot of the term that they will often use is work-life balance. I have my time for working on things, and then I get my time to relax and do the things I actually like to do, which is very different than what I would say my life looks like. I think the WEquil School and WEquil App is as a business idea is just very unique because it is so flexible. It is, really based off of creating novel and useful value. And when let's say I'm composing a music piece and I'm putting it on the app, that's still technically, helping my business. It's an example project for students at WEquil School. It's more resources on the app that people can look at. But of course, it's just something that I wanted to do. And so a lot of this process of leveraging your strengths, interests, and passions has just kind of become a part of the way I live at this point. There are a lot of different ways that we've been doing that. Like my sister, Alia, and we do Taekwondo. We're both black belts. Oftentimes my parents will come and take videos of us, and that's something we can, post as examples for people at WEquil School, and that can just be like a fun video for them to watch. I also really enjoy cooking, and sometimes I'll make cooking videos or post recipes, and I have a healthy cooking club. And so all of these things are definitely part of my personal life and hobbies and things that I like to do that I'd be doing anyways, but is beneficial to our business and, everything that we're trying to do, which is, I think I think that it's not really a work-life balance. It's kind of just a work and life merge into one, which is also part of what we're trying to help people to do, is that you don't have to, hate your work and then just do it so that you can finally have the freedom to do what you want. You can find the intersection between your strengths, interests, and passions, what you can provide, and the wants and needs of the world, and find that equilibrium. Of course, you'll need to do things that you don't like sometimes. There's just some grunt work involved in everything meaningful. But there's definitely a lot that people can do to make it more enjoyable and really make it something that is fulfilling to them.
Mm-hmm. That to me is so powerful. What you just said right there is the fact that you can find a way to make it so that you aren't trying to get away from what you do for a living. That there is opportunity out there so that the two, work and life, can become one. And so what you're doing for work is your life, and that energizes you, and that keeps you excited and drives you, gets you out of bed in the morning. That's what I love with the Life Edge. I really love what you're doing with WEquil, which is part of why we're partnering together moving forward. And I'm so excited because what you're doing in the educational space, I think, is so important, especially today with the invention of AI and the way technology is going, that things have to change, because the old system just isn't going to work for much longer in the future. And so as we continue to stay on this track of you and what you've been going on, what have been with WEquil, what have been some of the biggest challenges you've faced while building the app, and what have been some of the ways you guys have tried to overcome them?
Yeah, I think that the biggest challenge has always just been the software and making it easy enough to use that it really does add value to people. When this first started, we didn't have any professional developers. It was just me learning to code by myself. It was pretty sad looking at the app in those early days, but it kind of symbolized the way that this all started out, which was not some big ambitious project really, but just a way to solve our own educational struggles. So that has always been a challenge, but we have an amazing team. We're making progress every day. I think it's just a matter of time.
Mm-hmm. Looking ahead, where do you see your role with WEquil evolving, and where do you want WEquil to end up over the next few years?
Yeah, oh man, I think it is really hard to know, especially when you're doing something so innovative. I can't count how many times we pivoted or had some realization that changed what we were doing in some significant way. But yeah, I think when it comes to what we're doing in my role, I really just see it as continuing to follow this process myself. Like, the reason why we came to this whole learn by doing philosophy is just by seeing its power in my own experience. And so I think I'm just going to continue looking for ways that I can grow and create and learn alongside other people. And part of that is definitely working on the app. And working on the school, and so I think that's kind of where I see it at this point. You can't see the future, but I do see bright things ahead of us.
So you mentioned the app and the school, and I want to make sure we clarify this. Are those two separate things?
So they are separate, but the school runs through the app. So essentially, the WEquil School started out as just like a virtual micro school, and then we built WEquil App to scale WEquil School, And now that's grown into more of a global school platform where anyone can provide their own educational services or create learning pods. And WEquil School is just one of those communities on the app.
And your younger sister, Isla, is actually the one leading WEquil School, correct?
Yes. She's the CEO now.
That's so awesome. What have you two learned from each other in terms of leadership and then education and educational philosophy?
A million things, but I think the biggest one really is this concept of leveraging your strengths, because Isla and I, we are very, very different people. But part of that is the beauty of our relationship and the things that we can do together. And so while, of course, this first started out with me and her, there were definitely a lot of ways in which we had to make our process more generalizable and accessible to anybody, which is part of the reason why it's so flexible, is because we are so different. And so if we just made a program that was tailor-made for Sumay, then it wouldn't work for very many people. But because she and I are very different, and there was a lot of ways in which we had to see, like, maybe this works really well for me, but it doesn't work well for her, we could see that how we could make a program that would really fit and work for everybody, which is a big part of our process, is, leaving a lot of room for flexibility, and is really just based on the strengths, interests, and passions of each individual, and making it personalized to who they are and their goals and how they can continue to grow in that way. So I think that's the biggest thing.
For those that are listening to this episode and they're inspired by listening to what you've done, listening to what you and your sister are done, and maybe they want to do something similar, what advice would you give them?
I think the biggest piece of advice I can give is to really try to think from first principles in whatever you're trying to do, because I think as we're seeing this exponential growth when it comes to just the change that we see in our world, when you like the data created, all the software platforms, there's just so much changing that the precedent-based model of how you find success and how you're supposed to learn and what you're supposed to do is just not going to work for us anymore. And while that's scary, it's also a big opportunity for us to, think about how we want to reinvent our lives and how we want to reinvent the world. And so really seeing the problems that you face in your own life as just opportunities to grow and create and learn with other people is just, I think the best way to really leverage the nature and environment of our world right now.
Mm-hmm. That's like the most purest entrepreneurial answer. It was like there was quite a bit of Naval in that answer. I loved it.
Yeah, definitely.
As we start to wrap up, there's one question I love to ask all the guests, and that is, what is one lesson you've learned in life that you want to make sure you share with all the listeners?
Oh my goodness. Well, that's really hard. But I think that the main lesson that I would want people to take away from this is really trying to understand yourself, because most people, you would think that you would know yourself, but you really don't. And if you do truly try to understand who you are, that's when you can leverage what makes you unique, what makes you irreplaceable to add value to other people. And that's what, is really going to help you out in this world of AI and automation. And, you don't want to be replaceable, because even if you have a great SAT score, great GPA, or you get some degree, like there are thousands of other people who have done the exact same thing. What is it about you that makes you unique and makes you irreplaceable? What is that specific knowledge? Of course, Naval again. And so I think that's the main thing that is really missing from traditional education at this point, and the way that people just think about success in general.
Where can people go to join WEquil App, connect with you, learn more about WEquil App or WEquil School?
Yeah, so WeQuil app is on both the Play Store and the Apple Store. You can download it there or just visit it at wequil.app from any web browser. WeQuil School is on WeQuil app. You can just search up for the WeQuil School room there, and we have our leadership team there to answer any questions you have. And you can also sign up for our membership programs there as well. So yeah, I think everything's on the app.
That's great. And I'll make sure to include all those links down below for anyone who's interested, wants to check it out. You can find that down below in the description or show notes. And thank you, everyone, for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, share with a friend so we can continue to get more guests, amazing guests like Sumay on here. And just Sumay, thanks for taking some time to be on the Life Edge podcast.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me.